Hello, I'm local Democracy Reporter Emma Draper, and I've been speaking to the chair of the Liberal Vannin Party, Paul Weatherall, about the proposed wind farm site in Druidale and his party's position on it. Mr Weatherall says it would back renewable and green energy, but environmental reports must be taken into account.
Well, first of all, I think I gather that the Manx radio report was a bit misleading in that it gave the impression that Michael commissioners had come to a sort of conclusion about the proposed wind farms that MUA have recently announced, whereas in fact Michael commissioners have yet to meet to discuss it. So my comments are probably not as relevant as they might have been because of that. But my main reason for commenting was that I was concerned that Michael commissioners were coming to a view before properly discussing it and taking consultation on what people in Kirkmichael thought about it. So I was a bit surprised that they'd come out with that statement. But I understand that it was the views of Katrina Livingston, the chair, rather than the Michael commissioners as a whole. And that's understandable. Everyone's got their own views about the wind turbine proposals, and Katrina's perfectly entitled to have her views and to state them.
And is your party then pro-wind farms on the island?
We believe that there needs to be some onshore wind generation. So yes, in principle, the two proposals that the MUA have put forward, they've taken expert advice and decided that there are two sites on the island that best meet the requirements. And they are now considering which of those two sites they'll be taking forward. As far as the two sites are concerned, Liberal Vannin's view is that both have merits and both have disadvantages, and we wait to see what the outcome of the further investigations by Manx Utilities delivers. The Erie Staines site, I think, is the best one in terms of wind power generation, but it impacts more people. The site up at Druidale is a bit more remote, it won't affect so many people, but both of them also, they have some disadvantages in terms of how the wind farms will actually be constructed and delivery of materials, etc. So all that's still to be taken into account, and we're not making any final comment on the sites until the MUA have considered it further.
What do you think of that proposed timeline? Do you think 2026 is feasible for the government and for Manx Utilities?
Well, given project management on various other things in the last few years, I'll be surprised if the wind turbines are actually up and running in 2026. But, the government has declared a climate emergency a few years ago. I think, developing onshore wind is long overdue. So I think there is some urgency to get a wind farm established. Due process should take place. There'll be environmental impact assessments taking into account. And as I say, the actual way in which materials are going to be brought to either of the sites needs to be fully considered, and the impact on local residents and the countryside as part of that.
And do you have concerns about the impact it could have on the biodiversity and wildlife? Obviously, the government's really proud of the UNESCO biosphere status. Do you think that is a concern?
As I say, whichever sites the MUA finally select will be subject to environmental impact assessments. That doesn't mean that any environmental impact will stop it happening. It just means that if there is serious concern about particular species or habitats, that mitigation would have to be put in place. So the MUA may have to, develop habitat elsewhere if it's going to impact particular, species like hen harriers, for instance, or curlews in whichever site they choose. Doesn't mean it'll stop it. It just means it has to be taken into account.
And as a resident, obviously, on your manifesto that I read, you live in the north. So as a resident who could be affected, are you confident that this is still the right decision to have onshore wind farms?
Yes, the actual site is one to be considered carefully, and I've asked the commissioners for Lazaire and Balaf to consider holding a public meeting to discuss the proposals for the Druidale site, and I hope perhaps Michael commissioners will join in with that, and the three local authorities impacted will consult the public and get views. I know there are people who've been in contact with me who are concerned about wind turbines in Druidale, and I understand that. But there are equally people who think it's time government got on with it and we need a wind farm somewhere.
In your manifesto for the 2021 House of Keys election, you were more in favour of solar power.
Solar farms.
Solar farms, thank you, that's the one. Has this changed, or are you still in favour of those as well?
I think we need both, and the MUA have said, as well as developing an onshore wind farm, they're also keen to see solar panels installed on government buildings over the next few years as well. I think, again, that's long overdue. There's been quite a few instances recently where government buildings have been re-roofed without solar panels being installed. And I think, that's been short-sighted, and hopefully that's going to be rectified. But the north of the island's a good place for sunshine generally, and a solar farm in the north of the island, I think, wouldn't be a problem. The Mountain View Innovation Centre has an extensive solar panel system on its roofs and generates quite a lot of electricity through that. So I think the case is made for both solar and wind power.
That is the end of my questions. If there's anything you feel I've missed off or you'd like to add on, please feel free to do so.
I think, where we're going with power generation over the next 10 years or so, got to reduce our CO2 emissions. A lot of that is to do with the way we generate electricity. There'll always be a need for either gas or some form of replacement for pull rows, but we need to generate a lot more through renewable sources. The onshore wind farm proposals are the first step in doing that.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.